I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Welcome to the meeting of the Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media, consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. Meeting notice was also posted in the boardroom of the Upper School campus, sent to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Express Times, and the Hunterdon County Democrat, and sent to the clerks of Delaware Township, East Amwell Township, Flemington Borough, Raritan Township, and Reddington Township. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown in the agenda. May we rise to salute the flag, please? I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since we don't have a quorum for the meeting at the moment, we're going to do a roll call before and go immediately into recess to tour the campus. So on a roll call vote, Dr. Charney, Mr. Davidson, Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Kellogg, here. Dr. Nguyen, Mr. Nichols,
here.
Mr. Richard, here. Mrs. O'Donnell, and Mr. Panico. We are going to convene into recess. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to go into recess for approximately 30 minutes. We'll call the meeting back to order at about 7 o'clock.
Yeah, just we're going to take summer facilities, and then we'll be right back.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. A little unusual start to the meeting because we actually opened the meeting at 6:30 for a tour. We are reconvening now. So I'm actually going to kick this off with another roll call. So Heather, can I have a roll call, please?
Here.
Mrs. Hughes?
Here.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Here.
Dr. Nguyen? Here. Mr. Nichols?
Here.
Mr. Richard?
Here.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Here.
And Mr. Panico.
Here. I would also like to have a flag salute. Can everybody stand and salute the flag, please? Thank you, everyone. Can I have a motion to reconvene into public session, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Can I have a motion and a second on the minutes of August 16th, 2021, please?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote? Actually, you know what? Let's hold the roll call vote. Can I also have a motion and a second on the minutes of August 24th and August 27th as well? Those were the special meetings, the workshops.
So moved.
I have two motions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call vote on those four minutes, please?
Dr. Charney? Yes. Mr. Davidson? Yes. Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen? Yes. Mr. Nichol?
Yes.
Mr. Richard?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Abstain.
And Mr. Panico. Abstain from all?
Are you abstaining from all of them? Are you abstaining from all of them? Just the 16th. You can abstain
That's
from
fine.
just the 16th if you want. Just the 16th? Okay. And I'm going to abstain from just the 24th and 27th because I was in and out of those meetings. All right, now, student council report. We have Elena Lowe for student council report. Hi there, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Pleasure to meet you.
Okay. Wait, could you say that again? Sorry.
I just had pleasure to meet you, that's all.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Same. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. My name is Elena, and I'm really glad to be here today. giving you an update on Hunterdon Central's activities. Aria, who is going to present with me today, was not able to make it. Now I will go over the activity updates. Our first home football game was last Friday on September 17th, and during it, we ran the Snack Shack. We are very excited to be back and running the Snack Shack this year, guided by some new protocols. We are only selling prepackaged foods instead of working the grills and ovens as in the past. Looking forward, our Pink Out football game is on October 1st, where we will be selling caps for cancer. Caps are $10, and profits will be donated to cancer research associations. The football game on October 22nd is Homecoming, where we will be selling T-shirts with a Max Devil print for $10. T-shirts are available for purchase online now. Ms. Ulbrich and Ms. Panvita were inspired by Dr. Moore's provocation presentation. Another thing to mention is that the United Way of Hunterdon County is celebrating Hispanic Heritage Day on September 25th. Also, 2021 yearbooks are still available for purchase for $100. In addition to that, a limited quantity of 2020 yearbooks are also available for purchase. That is all for this update, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn.
Tell Ms. Kale we miss her. All righty, now Dr. Moore, I'll turn it over to you for your superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Panico, and everyone for coming out to join us tonight. A few things on my report tonight. The first item that's on the agenda is the monthly HIB and suspension report. We offer that report every month just to keep track and keep a tally of those incidences, and so far we're running in good shape. Later on in my report, I do have Mr. Brandt to come up and give the summary report of the second half of last year for the Student Safety Data System presentation that we do twice each year. So we'll do that in a little bit. I want to open, though, with Luke. So Luke is here tonight. Luke is a student in our Achieve program, and he worked last school year to draw up the designs for one of our classrooms, room 648. And his designs included appliances and cabinets, countertops, and a lot more. Luke drafted those plans, identified the materials and vendors, and then he made a presentation to staff and administrators to pitch his idea for this design. Mr. Thornton and the operations crew were able to take those exact plans and make Luke's vision a reality in that classroom. Such a success, I understand that Luke is now taking classes in our tech ed department this year to further explore this new passion. And I just want to show you what he did here. So board members, you've seen these pictures before, but I want to share them with everybody. Here's Luke in front of one side of the cabinet area with all of the appliances that he selected, and again, working with the vendors, and then we have running down the other side of the room. So I'd like to turn it over to Scott Rebholz, one of our special services, special education supervisors, to further talk about this project with Luke and to introduce some special people, not least of all him, but So Scott, go ahead.
All right, fantastic. So just a real quick bit of context. 2 years ago, our Achieve program was located in the alternate building. And we had grown very large, not only in size, but in scope of everything we were doing. So that necessitated the move to room 648. And 648, by all accounts, was just a very large classroom. There really wasn't much to it. And for the Achieve program, we do a lot of life skills, a lot of job prepping. So a change was in order. And we've got an exceptional staff here. So we've got to put her on the spot. But Mrs. Beam here is in the morning. So her class focuses on the life skills portion of the program. Mrs. Murphy, if you remember that name, is because she was the Teacher of the Year last year. She is our transition coordinator, so her responsibility is prepping them for experiences outside of the classroom. So she oversees job placements throughout the entire community, as well as some of the soft skills, resume writing, interview skills, etc. And then we have Rana Barazesh, who's one of our exceptional paraprofessionals. And she assisted Luke throughout the process. So I'm going to turn this over to them because they did all of the nuts and bolts involved with it. So Luke, I'm going to turn it over to you, bud.
Okay, Miss Bean, this is when I need Mr. Klein again. I think I got it, right? Yes. Okay. Let's see if we can. All right, just, if you could just hold this. Oh, it just went out. Okay.
I can leave it up there, I can even sit down and.
All right, you want to do it down here then?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, my goodness, okay.
I think the cord's just coming out.
Good evening, everybody. I am Rana Barazesh. I was fortunate enough to work with Luke when I asked to design the room with the help of one or two of our students. I brought my design board to teach them the right process of designing, and sure enough, Luke got very interested on the floor planning and how to draw the floor plan and transfer our classroom to what it is now. So Luke can take over.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening, everyone. My name is Luke Devries. Last year, I was exposed to some design plans from my coach, and I got interested in drafting plans, for living spaces. Because of the nature of the 12+ program, we needed to have kitchen space, and that's how everything started for me. My coach here taught me how to measure the room and draw the door, the floor plan of the classroom. I designed the room based on certain requirements, like which side of the classroom should have the kitchen space and the amount of cabinets and their position in the space. So here are the cabinets that we have. We decided to keep them simple and square, and we chose the color gray because we wanted to keep it neutral with the class. So we decided to install the sink base using the existing piping in order to cut back on expenses. We also need to get a fridge and 2 stainless steel tables, so we positioned it there. We also got a Formica countertop with backsplash for pricing reasons, and because we need to cover all 22 feet, we ended up specifying 3 different sizes of the same material for less seam. And this is the design, the drawings that I did, This board, I put the movie thing in relocation. The last board I made was the quantities and the price of the cabinets, see with all the expenses, and after I presented the plan to Mr. Rebholz and he approved of it, we now have the room specifically designed for the needs of our program, as you can see in pictures 12 and 13. This year I'm taking a technical drawing class. My goal is to learn how to draw scale and learn all the basics for residential and commercial drawing, as well as mechanical and industrial drafting by hand, and eventually the CAD program. Hopefully after graduation from the 12+ program, I will go on to RVCC to obtain a degree in industrial drafting and design. Thank you.
So Luke, I just want to thank you for your great work on this. It was really amazing what you put together, and we were pleased to be able to help you make it a reality in the classroom. So thank you so much for this work.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
And thank you for coming tonight and sharing it with us. It's fantastic.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, Luke Devries, everybody, thank you. All right, so let me, here we go. So the next portion of my report tonight, I do have some stuff to show on the screen, but not much. I don't know if members of the board, if you're okay sort of turning back and looking at the screen a little bit. I want to share a little bit about goals that we've been talking about for the district over the past couple of weeks as we've come off of our retreat at the end of August. So if you're more comfortable going down into the seats, by all means, you can join Mr. Panico down there, or you can just sort of crane up behind us here. You all know what I'm going to show you, so this isn't news to you all. I want to speak tonight at different times about getting back to normal this school year, but I've also spoken a lot in the past few weeks about some suspicion of normal, because we know we have a lot of big lessons to learn from our recent experiences with the pandemic, and the amount of work that we have to do to expand personalization and to guarantee equity and to ensure positive culture and experience on our campus for each of our students. The amount of work that we have to do there is monumental. The pandemic's adding to those imperatives and to our realizations about those things, but we've been worrying at them and working on them for some time here at Central. So I greatly appreciated the work that we did together as a board in retreat at the end of last month, and we just want to share a bit about the various discussions about goals for this school year that we've been having in different committees and meetings over the past couple of weeks. I look forward to discussing these further next month as we zero in on approval for some goals language and get rolling on all of these for this school year. And you'll note, and I'll mention later, that we have an updated meeting calendar for the board that's going to give us more room for those discussions. So what we have at the moment, and let me just share my screen again with you here. So talking about goals for this school year, and generally we talk about a couple of different kinds of goals in this context. There are board goals that create different changes in governance and in the way that the board operates to make sure that it's operating as efficiently as possible, and also that the board members are acting as best as they can to work with one another us here in the school, and also with community members whom they represent. So board goals represent different things in policy and different things in board workflow that the board wants to consider doing, and we had some good discussion about some items there. When we're talking about district goals, those are the goals that myself and administrators and teachers and counselors and all the other staff of the district work together on to reach targets for student achievement and also student experience here at Hunterdon Central. So we've spoken a lot about different equity goals and different student achievement goals over the past year, few years actually, and we're going to continue that work hopefully in some of the things that we're talking about tonight. So two different kinds of goals. There are other kinds I have my own goals that relate to my own professional growth and development that we'll talk about as well, and that you've been wonderful supporters in for me as I grow as a leader here at Central, and I appreciate that mightily, and we'll talk more about those as well on another evening. But proposed board goals for us tonight, the board looked at the imperative to adopt a comprehensive policy that communicates equity, anti-bias, and anti-racism beliefs and goals. In our retreat, we looked at several different examples and began the discussions of how to put our thoughts together on a strong policy statement that can guide the district moving forward in all of its work in this arena with its staff, students, and community members, with deep gratitude to all the community members, staff, and students who have joined us in that work so far. We also have, and you'll see some of it already being delivered here tonight on our agenda, implementation of a new meeting calendar, getting back to that calendar of 2 meetings each month so that we can do more to communicate with the public, to ensure that members here have the best opportunities to discuss with each other, and that we have plenty of opportunities for presentations on schoolwork, not just wonderful things like that we saw that Luke brought to us tonight, like things like that, but also challenges that we're facing and puzzles that we have to put together in which we need input from the board from a policy perspective to help guide us. So we're looking forward to a lot of wonderful conversations on that expanded meeting calendar this year, and hoping to move those into the IMC at some point as the IMC opens for business after 2 years of diminished operations and construction and all sorts of things. It's really shaping up to be a wonderful space. So we have those two board goals that we've talked about, and then additionally we have some district goals for myself, administrators, and other staff in the district to work on. One is focusing in on our counseling services department, and we've talked a lot this year with our new supervisor, Dr. Zorowicki, about taking measurements of community utilization and gaps and service in our counseling department, just to make sure that our counseling department is in the best possible position to do different kind of work for schools that we know we have to do in this post-pandemic world. Wonderful folks in our counseling services department. The data I've shared with you in the past, the tens of thousands of interactions they have with our students that we log and track and slice and dice to figure out how they're reaching different students, the work they've done to expand their understanding of race-based traumatic stress and some other key issues of wellness with our students, self-harm prevention, suicide prevention, substance abuse prevention. So much wonderful work goes on there, and we want to empower them even further by helping them get a sense with our entire community of where some specific areas might be for them to continue to forge ahead. We've also talked quite a bit over the past 18 months about our expansion of common assessment of students. And while I don't want to say that that just means more testing, it does involve more common tests that our students take. But the data that come from those tests and how we use that data provide a rich background for us to talk about equity concerns, disproportionalities, things like learning loss. I don't like that term, but that's a term that we have to face and deal with as we come out of the pandemic, and I'm remaining optimistic that we're coming out of the pandemic. So increased common assessment is something that we see in our district as an opportunity to help us get more of an understanding of where our students are. So this year, for the first time, we're going to be administering the PSAT 9th grade test to all of our 9th graders. That's coming up soon. We're also this year supporting all of our students by funding the PSAT 11th grade. Typically 11th graders take the PSAT, the NMSQT PSAT. So we're going to fund that for them so that they don't have to pay for that this year out of their own pockets, and we're using some federal grant money for that with the hope that that expands participation in that test. Down the road, in the next few years, we'll continue to look at administering that test to all of our students here on campus during the week instead of leaning on those traditional Saturday administrations. We're also using different state assessments this year. New Jersey's offering the Start Strong assessments for the first time to all schools, for all schools to use this year. We're going to be administering those in the next couple of weeks, and then our own benchmarks that we have through a service piece of software that we have called Link It that allows us to do benchmark assessment of our students throughout the year. So we're going to be swimming in a lot of data to be able to root out any disproportionalities and any concerns about gaps or loss. So again, this, like the other goal, is we've got to take these measurements, we've got to identify the gaps, we've got to put plans in place, and then we have to show results. And that whole process would be presented to the board throughout this school year, all the way through the spring to show results. We were pleased with some results that we saw last year as we worked in counseling and in curriculum to close some gaps. And finally, we have a goal. Oops, there we go. We have talked a lot about measures of school culture here at Central, and we've used over the past several years the New Jersey Department of Education School Climate Survey, School Culture Survey. It's a free survey they make available to all schools to administer. It's actually part of our efforts to comply with the anti-harassment, intimidation, bullying laws. So we've used that over the past couple of years and learned a lot about culture at Central. The one thing that we found last year is that the school culture survey from the Department of Ed is insufficient to help us understand where racism, bias, and other equity concerns play out in our culture and where our concerns are and where our victories are there. So we are going to forge ahead this year on developing some new metrics to go along with or even fully replace the New Jersey Department of Ed School Climate Survey to get a better sense of how in a broad way these things are playing across our campus. And I'm talking again specifically racism and bias, but also all of the other school culture concerns that we might traditionally consider in a survey like this. For example, safety and the ability to access opportunities to participate, some of those things as well. So Mr. Brandt's office in particular, working with his vice principals and working across other offices as principal, we're looking forward to using these measurements to have some targeted programs and activities to close some of those concerns as well. And we have a good place to start, certainly, with our student unions. Last year, with the board's help, we introduced a Black Student Union, Latinx Alliance, Asian Alliance, and some others to join some long-standing clubs like Pulse and others that have been here a long time to help students feel comfortable in communities, in affinity groups, where they can gather together and talk to one another, share stories and help with one another, and also give us good, honest feedback about their experiences here. So we're looking at the potential of starting in those areas as focus groups to see how we can learn more about the experience here on campus, and then begin to deploy programming to ensure that we're giving each student access to the promise that we offer here in terms of having a home and a place to grow and develop the foundation of their adulthood. So these are a set of goals that we've looked at in committee, that we have talked about from our retreat on through until tonight, and that I look forward to talking more about with you in October toward adoption, formal adoption of these goals as we head through the rest of the school year. So we'll have plenty of time to talk more about them, but I wanted to introduce them to you tonight and share where we've landed in terms of the consensus conversations that we've been developing along the way. So thank you for that. And from here, I'm going to switch gears and turn to Mr. Brandt, who has a report tonight on student safety data, and this is a mandated report that we do twice a year for the state, but Mr. Brandt's here tonight to share that information with you. And Ed, you can use the wireless, I think, if you're all right. Yes. You want to use the wireless? Okay.
Switch it over to LAN.
Yes. There you go.
All right. By the way, there's a shot from the back of the building towards you can see the buses all lined up, dropping students off in a early morning in the winter there. But anyway. Pardon me. All right. So as Dr. Moore said, the Student Safety Data Systems Report, this is done twice a year for the first 6 months of the school year, starting from July 1st through December 31st of the school year. And then again, the second period, as you can see, is January 1st through June 30th. So 6 months, we had a report for those first 6 months of the school year last year. And now we're going to discuss briefly the last 6 months of this past school year. What gets reported? Incidents that occur on school grounds under the umbrella of violence, any vandalism, weapons offenses, and substance offenses. And there's other incidents that need to be reported also that occur either on grounds or off the school grounds. And they include any type of harassment, intimidation, and bullying areas, or also any other incidents that may lead to the removal of the student temporarily in a suspension, for example. We also have to report out any HIB trainings and programs that we have. And I believe in a few months, we'll be reporting out about the HIB trainings that we have internally here in school. This is a bulleted list right here of what specific type of areas need to be reported. This is not saying that all of these occurred here. These are under the umbrella of everything that would need to fall under those previous slides. So in reporting out, first off, in the harassment, intimidation, and bullying areas, in the last 6 months of the school year last year, we had 2 investigations. And of those 2 investigations, one of them ended up being a confirmed HIB. Again, that was from January 1st through June 30th of last school year. And under the violence and vandalism areas, we had 2 occurrences of violence that reached to the point to report. Happy to report no vandalism, 1 substance offense, and no weapons to report in that 6-month period. A couple slides to share some of the interventions and prevention processes that we have. Our 9th grade health program introduces and basically actually reintroduces the HIB laws to the students and what that means and their actions and what they need to do to follow through with them. It has been, I would say, obvious that the law now has been in place for a number of years. So these students have had these presented to them from 1st through 8th grade also. So it's not new to them, but our presentations in the 9th grade health curriculum are a place where they hear from us also. Our Nurtured Heart approach with CGI, our partners with them, has been one tool to help us. Sources of Strength, which is a group of students who look towards what the name is, the sources of strength in a positive mode, or Unified Sports. The whole list right there are activities, groups, initiatives that we have that help in interventions and prevention of any of the types of actions that end up in this report. One thing I'd like to note too is the restorative practices right there. The bottom bullet, that's an area that over the past couple of years, in working with CGI and working with other partners, looking to incorporate processes of restorative practices within our code of conduct work also. When we work with students and their behaviors, it's not a matter of checking a box that if you did this, this is the result. There are still consequences, but they are young adolescents growing, and we work very closely in building up and helping them to understand the repercussions of their actions, trying to back them up a little bit to think about proactively before you make that type of action or reaction, what would be a better practice for you. So restorative practices is an area that I'd like to highlight real quick with that. And then lastly, resources and recommendations. The safety team, for example, meets monthly. The vice principal team, we meet weekly. And based on these reports as well, we take a look at our practices. We take a look at what are some of the recommendations from outside sources and within. And we try to use a lot of these different areas to make Hunterdon Central as safe as it can be for all of our students. The grade level teams right there is one, for example, where you have that cocoon of the vice principal, house secretary, a nurse, student assistance counselor, a team of counselors that work and follow those students all the way through graduation. So that's a team right there that I'd like to highlight too that do wonderful things. Peer mediation, I'll also mention that to highlight the fact that students have a role in this as well. We have peer mediators in the upper grade levels that have been fantastic, and every year they go through training and they end up being very influential among their peers. So there's just two right there that I want to highlight of the different resources we have moving forward. And I look forward to coming back in a couple months to talk about HIB and some of the things we're doing in that area. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brandt. I have a few more items to update the board on. I don't know if we're all done with the presentation, so you can cut that out. Yeah, let's see. Good, thank you. So just a few more items. I thank everybody. Thank you, Mr. Brandt, for that thorough report. We do that twice a year, as Mr. Brandt noted. We'll do that again sort of in the winter to kind of look back on this first half of this school year. And one of the things we noted was, a lot of low numbers on these incidents from last year because of our shortened schedule. And as we started to have more students back in, we started to see some more activity in some of those areas. But again, not outweighing the great feelings we have all around of having the kids back on campus. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on in my report too. A couple of quick things. Hispanic Heritage Month began last week and runs through the middle of October for not just here at Central, but for everyone. We've been conducting, we have been and are planning to conduct some more events and activities across campus to celebrate. So far, our world languages classes have been leading classroom discussions for campus with examinations of heritage and literature and history, including Costa Rican Independence Day, which kind of kicked off the month of Hispanic Heritage commemoration on September 15th. Students have also been examining and discussing differences between terms like Hispanic and Latinx and some other terms that we've talked about here in our discussions on equity, and also working on dispelling stereotypes. Students in some of our extracurricular groups are working with Mr. Brandt and his folks on planning a celebration to take place in the IMC Breezeway area early next month with music and some other activities there. That's a space outside that we've come to value as a space that we can use for all kinds of activities, not just as a thoroughfare for students to walk across campus. And as long as the weather cooperates, we're excited to have more events outside on campus. So I'll share more with you all soon. Couple of things on the agenda tonight to talk quickly about. We have our health-related closure plan on the agenda tonight. So the law that was passed back in the spring of 2020, which set the rules for our exit to remote instruction at the second half of that school year, requires that we update and get board approval on that plan each year. So that's on the agenda for your approval tonight after some updates for this school year. And I just certainly hope that we never need to use that plan again, but we do have to approve it annually here. I'm also seeking your approval on 2 calendars under organizational items on the agenda. The first is a modified academic calendar, which takes into account the closing that we had, the emergency day at the beginning of the year to resolve the flooding from Ida. The second calendar there is the board calendar that I referenced earlier, where we have some additional meetings on the calendar for us to expand on board discussions of various topics on the agenda and in presentations. So there was clear consensus from the board on returning to that schedule now that we're starting to think about normalcy coming out of the pandemic, and I'm pleased to get back to that as well. Quick notes about Hurricane Ida. We experienced, as you know, significant flooding in the 600s and in the 800s on the first floor, and the alternative program building that sits alongside the 600. We visited that site on our walk earlier tonight as we went up to the IMC. While the 600s and the 800s rebounded well, the alternative building continues to require a lot of rehab, and that's underway now. We had partners in there to demo and clean, and we're working with contractors now through an expedited emergency process to rebuild, and they've already got some of the sheetrock replaced up there. You'll see motions tonight to address some of the costs, but do understand and do know that we're in touch with insurance and have access to other assistance to ensure that this doesn't hit our budget. And we consider ourselves very fortunate for how we came through the storm, and we're very pleased to be able to open school after losing only 1 day to cleaning up and drying out. Particularly indebted and thankful for Mr. Thornton and his operations crew, and Mr. Glenberry in the transportation office, and all the drivers and custodians and folks, office folks who helped out here. They report to Heather Spitzer, our business administrator, and everyone there involved in our response to the storm just did incredible, tireless work to address the facilities and transportation issues. I was here with some members of Mr. Brandt's team that night, stealing clothes out of the school store to help some stranded motorists, and Mr. Panico was here as well to help out with that. It was just, it was quite a night. And folks were dealing with school issues here at the same time that they were dealing with issues at home from the storm. And I hate that they were in that position of dealing with both, but I can't help but be thankful for the dedication that they showed, all of those folks here that night, to help campus recover. So it was quite a night, quite a next day, but really was a testament to the sort of devotion that folks have to our school and our campus here. Some notes on our opening in the face of COVID this year. We had a strong opening, and it's wonderful to see all the smiles on campus. I think we're doing quite well, and I join so many others in being thankful for all that we're able to do this year. We have had some experience already with COVID. We've logged 11 student cases and 5 staff cases since September 1st. This is more than we had last September, but not quite as much as we've had during our busiest months, although it's hard to compare our experience this year with last year because there are so many differences, not just in our approach, but also in the disease itself. We continue to send notes to the community about cases, and while I know that some of that is a nuisance to some, we do feel it important to send that news when we have cases. Some districts have moved towards setting up a web page that you can go to see the numbers without being necessarily notified, but we do want to continue to share what we know about the spread of the disease when we know it, so I am planning to continue to send those notices. We do also continue to update our Safe Opening web page. If you go to our website and go to the Quick Links section, you'll see our Safe Opening web page, and it's got some frequently asked questions on there that we're going to continue to add to. One of the questions that I get asked often, in which I'll share some thoughts about tonight, is why do unvaccinated people have to quarantine if they are close contacts when vaccinated people do not, especially in the face of breakthrough infections that we all know do occur. So the answer to that is simply that the Department of Health protocols for quarantine and exclusion, they're handed down to us, and those are the protocols that we have to follow. And they currently note that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine if you're in close contact with an ill person, but you do have to monitor your symptoms and then quarantine at the first sign of any concerning symptoms. Now, those protocols have changed at different times over the past 18 months, so it's possible that they could change again, and we'll adjust our practices if they do, but right now, those are the practices that we must follow as districts working with the Department of Health. Lunch, like contact tracing and masking, is another area in which we're not entirely back to normal. As you know, we have 2 lunch periods instead of our unit lunch that we know from the past. And I want to clarify a couple of things because this has been a big topic. It's been a complex topic for our kids, and I want to make sure that everybody understands our position on this. 2 things in particular. If we can, and we hope we can, we will return to a single unit lunch. We'd love to do that because we do recognize, especially after last year, how important the socialization opportunities are for our kids. And that socialization opportunities have to be a big part of all of our activities this year. We can't now because we can't reach the sanitization and disinfection levels that we need to safely support 1 unit lunch spread out across our campus. So we're working with the 2. Second, we have no plans of moving to 4 lunch sessions unless public health directives or conditions require us to establish more distancing between our students. So I know students have been concerned that if that we may look at 4 lunches as a response to any misbehavior. That's not what we're about in this plan. I don't want to do 4 lunches at all if we can avoid it because of, again, the value that the lunch period brings in terms of socialization and just a moment to let off some steam and take a break for our kids. So we'll stick with 2 as long as we have to. We'll move back to 1 as soon as we can, and 4 would be a break glass in case of emergency kind of moment for us. If we had to go to 4 lunches, we would do that only if we have to, and again, I'll resist that. Again, I didn't show it tonight, but everybody got used to me showing that balance of wellness, public health, and educational goals that we have during a time like this. And as I noted frequently last year, that balance is very difficult to walk. But sometimes, we have to take calculated risks on things like distancing to make up public health distance in other ways. And lunch is an example of that. We think lunch is very important for our kids, so we don't want to compromise it any further. A couple of other quick things, and then I'm all done with thanks for your patience tonight going through all of these bits and pieces. I've mentioned in prior meetings that I didn't want to engage in COVID testing on campus for staff and students. The governor's August executive order requiring staff vaccination, or if they remain unvaccinated, frequent testing starting in October, does not require schools to facilitate testing in any way. That's not a requirement. And I've been concerned about giving up space on our campus for testing during the school day and just what it would mean to coordinate that for us when we're still dealing with levels of contact tracing and other activities that we thought would be behind us. But the state is offering several programs for free testing on school campuses. So we would be able to engage in that without spending any money and without really doing any coordination at all. So I want to make sure that we have every opportunity to take advantage of any assistance. So I am asking tonight for permission to sign up for one of those programs, but that doesn't obligate us if we find anything down the road that we're unhappy about. And again, I go into this not sure that I want to devote space on campus to these sorts of things. My other concern is that the state program does require us to make efforts to test students as well as staff, but they stress, and I have to stress, that that would be voluntary for students. But again, if at any point I don't like what I see in the programs, I'll certainly move to take us out of it. I just want to hedge my bets and make sure that we're in the best position to take advantage of that assistance if it's available. And with that, and my thanks to Luke for his presentation earlier and Mr. Brandt, and Elena for her presentation. I turn it back to you, Mr. Panico. Thanks, everybody, for going through all of that with me.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. At this time, it is now the residence forum for any items on the agenda. So these are action items on the agenda. If you wish to speak, come on, step up to the podium. When you sign in, make sure you write down your first name, your last name, your municipality, and your address. And you can speak if you could open your statement with that as well. There is a blurb there, but most importantly, residents will be limited to speak for 5 minutes and may not speak twice until all those wishing to speak have had their turn. So if you want to speak about any items that are on the agenda, please come on down. On the agenda. Items on the agenda. It's just action items on the agenda. So does it relate to an action item? Any items at all later. Later is open, so it's not just action items. Later is all topics. Yeah, you'll have another chance. Yeah. It's just a couple minutes away. Seeing none, we will move on through the agenda. We are on the organizational items. So the first one is the adjusted board meeting schedule. So can I have a motion on, I believe this is G1, which is the new board meeting schedule, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're on G2, which is the health-related closure plan section. Can I have a motion and a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the last one here is the school year calendar. Can I have a motion and a second on G3, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you. Can I have an update from the Student Life and Program Committee, please? Hey, Rob, you got to hit that button. It's not, there you go.
Is that better? Sorry. Board of Education goals were discussed, including the meeting calendar, conduct of board meetings, professional development, summary and regulation updates for dress code and substance abuse. There are 4 items for action tonight. The first one is tuition and transportation for 3 special ed students. This is a yearly thing we do. The second one is the fiscal impact of the district professional development plan. And this shows all of the expenditures from our professional development this year. Then we have 2.3, which is policies for first reading. These policies include surrogate parents and resource family parents, education of homeless children, eye protection, etc. And these are all mandated by the state. And finally, 2.4, abolished policies. These are policies that no longer apply or have been revised to the extent that we don't need them on the books anymore. So with that, I'd like to move 2.1 through 2.4 for approval tonight.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mr. Nichol?
Yes.
Mr. Richard? Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Mr. Panico?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Can I have an Operations and Transportation Committee update, please?
Yes, you may. Operations and Transportation Committee met on September 14th. We discussed some of the summer projects, including the IMC, which is really close to being done. We had a chance to walk through it before. It's beautiful. I want to highlight a few of the items, a few of the action items. We're looking to approve bus stops and routes for the 21-22 school year. As Dr. Moore talked about before, we're looking to approve participation in the State of New Jersey COVID-19 K-12 school screening testing program for on-site testing through state contracted vendors. We're looking to approve application of a $3,500 grant from Special Olympics to fund the 21-22 Unified Sports Program. We need to authorize the business administrator to make withdrawals, basically, from the emergency reserve as well as maintenance reserve, so we can enter into emergent contracts for the Ida storm repairs. There are also 7 items or 7 policies that are up on first reading as listed on the agenda. And with that, I'd like to move items I-1 through I-13.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Charney? Yes. Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mr. Nichol?
Yes.
Mr. Richard?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Mr. Panico?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Can I have a Personnel Committee update, please?
Sure. The Personnel Committee met virtually on September 15th. Dr. Moore introduced us to Karen Bishop Johnson, who is his recommendation for Assistant Business Administrator. We had a nice chat with her. We then discussed some changes to how the board meetings will run going forward. As Dr. Moore indicated and the board just approved, we'll be moving back to 2 meetings per month, the first being a workshop, which we did prior to COVID. We then reviewed the agenda items, a few of which I'll highlight. We have 2 retirements on the agenda, both long-term employees, 20-plus years, a math teacher and a member of our maintenance department. We thank them for their time with the district, and we wish them well in their future endeavors. We have several resignations and a creation of 2 new positions, 1 additional duty release aide and 3 cafeteria aides, which were warranted by the split lunches that we've been running that Dr. Moore referred to earlier. We have 4 new contractual positions recommended by Dr. Moore, 2 of the duty release aides, and then Ms. Bishop Johnson as Assistant Business Administrator, mentioned earlier, as well as Mr. Scott Cohen as a new business teacher, who some of you will recognize as attending our board meetings frequently and a parent in the district. We have some substitute teacher appointments and some summer work in counseling and curriculum to approve. We have an appointment of after-hours tutorial instructors for quarantine and ill students, paid for by federal grant money. We have some Schedule C club advisors and Schedule D coaches, which we typically see. We have a kind of a neat internship, a supervisor internship proposed by one of our long-term teachers, John Delisle, who will be working under the mentorship of Jesse Spencer, who's our athletic director at Centenary College. And then lastly, we have a motion to approve a sidebar agreement with the HCEA, which we'll be shifting around some funds in a cost-neutral manner to hire a head girls wrestling coach, which is pretty cool. With that, I'd like to move J1 through J24.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Charney? Yes. Mr. Davidson? Yes. Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mr. Nichol?
Yes.
Mr. Richard?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Mr. Panico?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Any additional business or board comments at this time?
Just want to welcome aboard our new Assistant Business Administrator. Thank you for your approval there. Karen Bishop Johnson comes to us with a wonderful mix of experience, and we're looking forward to her being a good partner for Heather. And that office is, you know, again, with Jim Lynn's retirement, there's a lot of transition and a lot of things to do, but we're putting together a great team over there under Heather's guidance, and the folks who have been working there for a long time have been doing great work as we transitioned into this school year. So thank you all, and we're looking forward to getting her on board.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Hearing no further additional business or board comments, now is the time for the residence forum for any items that are on or off the agenda. Similar to the first one, the residence forum will be a maximum of 30 minutes in length. Everybody will be asked to keep their comments to 5 minutes, and no one will be able to speak twice until all others who wish to speak have been heard. Also note that there are some other directives there in that opening statement that I won't read, but they are important. So if you are willing, if you want to speak, come on down, sign in, name, address, the whole 9. Give us your name and your address before you speak, and good. And if you guys are interested in speaking, it's just best to form a line because at some point we cut it off. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Jivas. I'm glad to be here this evening and have the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of a quickly growing group of Hunterdon Central employees who have questions and concerns regarding the district's implementation of Governor Murphy's mandatory vaccine and/or testing mandate. We have come here in the spirit of collaboration, not confrontation. We are disappointed and frustrated by the lack of context around the decisions being made, as well as the lack of transparency, guidance, and leadership from our administration. We understand these are challenging times for everyone. However, we've come here in search of some answers. Our group represents employees from across all departments of our school. Some have recovered from COVID and have natural immunity. Some are fully vaccinated and are concerned about extending mandatory order to include a booster injection, which we oppose. Some are opposed to the injection for various reasons, including but not limited to the fear of harm from the vaccine, anxiety about the injection based on witnessing severe or adverse reactions of our loved ones, including Bell's palsy, seizures, extreme vertigo, and even the death of a child, an unborn child, my apologies. Some are opposed to the injection for ethical, moral, philosophical, and other strong medical and religious beliefs. These are at the core of every person being represented right now. It's imperative that you understand this growing group of Hunterdon Central employees is not against safe, clinically tested vaccines. This group is anti-mandate. This is simply very simple to express and understand. Your body, your choice. My body, my choice. I'm sure you've heard that many times. Like many board members, we're pro-science. This group of Hunterdon Central employees is extremely well researched, informed, and highly capable of comprehending the medical data and statistics that we have researched ourselves. CDC data, in addition to personal research with physicians and other medical personnel, have provided us with a wealth of information needed to make educated decisions for ourselves and our families regarding masking, prophylactic measures, vaccines, and other treatments such as ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other treatments that exist. Our group strongly believes the scientific evidence that fully vaccinated people are contracting the virus and are now super spreaders. Therefore, in our opinion, weekly testing should include all employees regardless of vaccination status. In spite of this, please understand, we do not support a mandate for weekly testing. Equity. We've talked a lot about that in the past year. There's no equity in a mandate. This is a violation of the 14th Amendment. And I quote, forced testing, medical surveillance by government actor, or forced masking of other similar measures violates the 14th Amendment, regardless of whether they're applied to exempt persons or anyone. If the testing mandate is invoked, this group of employees requires transparency and full disclosure of the process in addition to the privacy that we're each entitled to regarding our medical status. Of course, this includes physical, mental, and emotional health. Details such as what type of tests are extremely important. A PCR test is not an acceptable option for this group due to the highly carcinogenic substances used on some swabs. The saliva swab or other options the saliva swab or other options is something the group would like to hear about, specifically the safety of the test and who's liable in case someone is injured during a test. As I close the comments on behalf of this group, this growing group of very concerned, intelligent, and compassionate Hunterdon Central employees, we ask for an equitable decision regarding Hunterdon Central's district policy on testing that is based on science and our constitutional rights as American citizens. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to address the board, and I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
I can't top that. Okay, give me a second. I just want to say ditto to that great speech. Thank you. You did a great job, and I appreciate that as a nurse. So my name is Carol Prignoli. I'm a registered nurse almost 40 years. I survived AIDS, SARS, everything. I worked in an emergency room in New York City. I ain't afraid, okay? It's very disturbing to see a child in gym class say to the teacher she feels like she's going to pass out because she has to wear a mask. My daughter has Lyme disease. She always feels hot. So you know that, and your nurses know that. It's heartbreaking.
Can you please speak to the board?
It's
Thank you.
heartbreaking as a mother and a nurse to see that, to hear your kid say, you're going to pass out to the teacher, and the teacher thinks it's funny. That's a mistake. Second of all, I can't top what you said, but I'm going to tell you that your Randy Weingard, your American Federation of Teacher, just resigned because she was colluding with Ann Shugart, over emails closing schools. So the point I'm trying to make on top of your point is you're politicizing schools, and it's wrong. I'm a parent, I'm a taxpayer, and I'm concerned for everybody. I'm a nurse, and I'm smart. And believe me, I know what's going on. Because where were all you guys when it was AIDS, when people were dying in front of me, really dying in front of me? Nobody was there, but I was. And I'm going to tell you what's going on. This is all politics, and I want it out of my school, and I don't want my kid hurt. The masks don't work, and it's nonsense. And everybody here knows it who has a half a brain. Because I didn't wear it during AIDS, and I'm standing here, and I'm 58, nurse almost 40 years. So don't tell me that you know more than a nurse, because you don't. So I just want to say that she's going to go to jail one day for collusion, and so is that other dimwit. The CDC is going to go to jail one day, and you're going to be choosing what side of politics you're really on, because it better be for America. Okay? Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
Does everybody get it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I go, or are you responding?
No response. No response. So you can go.
So why are we speaking if there's no response?
Look, the board is a longstanding policy not to respond.
so you
If
don't-
there's a question, we'll circle back with you.
Okay, because
Yeah,
that's one of the
absolutely.
reasons I'm here. Although I am in healthcare, and I have to say that I agree that my pen is, I'll use my pen. It's okay. I have to say that, people are using the wrong test because there needs to be more emphasis on antibody testing for those of us who've had shots as well as the disease. Is this phone? Okay. All right. I actually am not speaking about masks, although being a healthcare provider, I can tell you that no mask help except an N95 that's been well fitted. And I have a son who's an intensivist at Hopkins who agrees. One of the reasons I came is that I retired from academia. I'm just going to take this off. Hello, can you hear me?
Tim, you got the mic off or no? You talk now?
Can you hear me?
No. Hold on.
I feel like I can't say anything as important as the First Lady but I really came to say that I was hoping to get involved again. I actually used to be on the Central Board. I have 3 children who went through here. I have 8 grandchildren. And I retired from academia and said I'm going to get involved in school boards again. And the very first thing that happened is I went to my local school board meeting where it was closed. Apparently, there were 3 people sitting in an office somewhere, and everyone else was virtual, so I spent the night driving around last week. Very unhappy woman, I must say. So I applaud you, and I applaud the messenger of the superintendent was just great. Would that we had more messaging like that in the United States. I think whether you are political or not, you need a strong leader who you know who to follow. So I applaud Central for having that. Your grounds look beautiful. Sorry you had flooding. I really came to say how impressed I was with the communication of where the meeting was when it started, that you're going to have extra meetings to discuss what needs to be discussed. So I really, I was here like to, I don't have children in school. If I was, I'd be with the lady. I won't tell you my profession, but I would be with the lady who is against masking. And I do think that testing is all about who profits from the testing, because to test a dead virus, I can get a dead virus out of anybody with a PCR test. They need to look at T-cell antibodies. But there's been no money appropriated for that. So that's another story. I came with two questions. One, I would like to know the board's response. Since I come from academia and was a dean for many years, what is your response to critical race theory and how that will be implemented as opposed to, or will it be implemented? Is it up to the individual teachers here, instructors? It sounds like you do a lot already about equity, and I know the school has a very rich cultural history, but I would like to know if there are any plans to, people have been afraid of that term, and I would like to know what it means here. Secondly, because I believe that we are extremely inclusive in Hunterdon County, and I would like to know that there are not going to be hires and more courses developed based on a mandate that's federal, and if there have been any monies obtained to implement that. So that's one thing. Secondly, on the agenda, I saw a $4 million bill for busing, and I'm assuming you still contract out the way you did years ago when I was on the board? You contract out?
Not all.
No, you don't. You hire individual and your own school buses now.
Both.
Okay, I think it was a combination then, and you shared with Raritan Township. So my question is, has anyone looked, because I have not, I went to Reddington to ask this, and I did go to the township meeting and ask this, which, by the way, is also very open, except that they meet for 2.5 hours in executive session and keep everyone else waiting, unlike this board, which is my favorite board meeting so far in retirement, I must tell you.
Might put that on my website.
I would like to know if there were savings attained during the shutdown and partial shutdown. I can't imagine that there weren't. I know you have to pay salaries, but I know gas and no busing and no sports and no lunches and so forth must have incurred some sort of savings along the way. I would like to know where that can be found, and if you could point me to the place that that's been considered, along with how that compares to what monies you receive from state and national entities. I would like to know what has been reported back to the township, from which I pay 80% of my taxes through schools. And I'm one of those people that did not bail to Florida, go there part of the time, still pay my farm. My husband is on Board of Adjustment. I mean, we still are good citizens. I would like to know that there has been discussion of monies, savings that were realized when everything was shut down and virtual. I don't know if you can answer any of that now or point me to where I could find that information, and if so, how much money was realized.
So thank you for both questions.
Thank you.
I appreciate them. This is exactly why we don't always answer questions at the dais, because I don't have prepared answers for either of those. But if you have your contact information, we will close the loop for you. The other thing I'll say too, perfect. The other thing I'll say too is if you send those questions in via email, we'll get them to you ahead of time so you got them.
I wanted to hear what you were going to say first.
Without a doubt, I understand.
And can I just ask if that $4 million is for this coming year?
Okay.
Or was for the past?
Understood. We'll get that to you. All right. No further public comment. At this time, can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion and a second?
No, not me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, ad hoc negotiation.
Oh,
We can do it another time.
we'll do it another day.